Hi, this is Chong Kim, and we're going to do word search in JavaScript. Let's take a look at the input. We're going to take this grid and look for these words. If it has a question mark, that's a wildcard character. So it'll look for words going across diagonally and down or up. It'll also snake across. So ROCKS, it should match that as well. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is let's create an index.html file. Okay, and since JavaScript doesn't have any file I/O, we'll load this into the DOM. So we're going to read from input.text, and we'll just put this in a text area. We'll call this data. For the style, we'll just say that it's hidden, so display none. Okay, so let's open this up. Okay, we'll bring up the JavaScript console and we'll check to see if that exists. So we'll say document.get element by ID of data. And we see that we do have the element, it shows up, and the content is there. So we're able to, so we have the data set up, and all we need to do now is just invoke the JavaScript. So we go into this index.html file, and at the very top, we're going to include our wordsearch.js. Okay. Okay. Let's start by printing a hello world. We can either do it using document.write, or we can do it using, actually let's do document.write. We'll do it in two ways. Okay, so when we load the page, we see the hello. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Okay, and we should also be able to do console.log hi there. And now we see that hi there is put in our console. So we can use this for debugging purposes and ways to explore any of the data that we want to expand. So now that we have a connection here, let's do the first part, which is get access to the data. Okay, so we'll run into a problem, but we'll just do it this way first. So we were able to get access by doing document.get element by ID. And well, let's just see. Actually, let's and we'll just print this out on the console. So console.log this thing. Okay, so when we run it, we got a null. And the reason why is because if you take a look at the code, the word search JavaScript is at the very top, and the body contains the data. But because this is at the top, it runs before the data is loaded. So we need to make sure that we run this code after the data has been loaded. And we can do that by putting this into window.onload. And we turn this into a function. So this way the function gets executed when the onload happens rather than immediately. So we'll just create a function, and that function is going to be associated with onload. So let's see. So now we see that we do have some data here, but we don't want the element, we want the data. So we can do dot value, and let's see, and the value returns a string. Okay, so from the string we want to split it into two. So we want to split it by the blank line over here. So if we do this, we should get an array. And it looks like we have an array here. This square bracket means it's an array. And so we can see that the first element is all of this stuff, the grid, and the second element is the words. So we have basically what we want, and we can store that in a variable. We can just, I'll just call it array. Actually, data. Okay. So now that we have the data, we need to extract the row and column information, and well, the grid information. So basically, it's the grid. So how do we get the grid? So if we get the data and get the first part, which is the grid, and we split it on new line, then we should be able to get say grid 0, 0, and we can see that 0, 0 should be a capital U. So when we do this, we should see a capital U. Okay, so we have a capital U, and we're so our grid is set up. The next thing is the words, and that would be the second part of the list, but we split it on the comma. And let's take a look at the words. Okay, so we see. Okay, so we have two problems here. One is that they need to be uppercase, and the other is that they need to have the spaces removed. There's spaces over here, and this is also a white space, this carriage return. So we need to get rid of those. So there is a function called, actually this is a list, and there should be a for each. Actually, there should be a map. And what you want to do for each of those word elements, we can use W, is we can do two uppercase. I'm not really sure if this is the right, well actually let's check. So if we have a W here, see two, yes, it's two uppercase, and that'll convert it into an uppercase. And if we have spaces here, we can say strip. I think it's, no, actually, let's try trim. Yes, it's trim. So we could do trim, and then we can follow it up with two uppercase. Okay, so you can see that it's an uppercase W. So we can, it doesn't matter which order we do it in, so we can do two uppercase first, and then we can do trim. Okay, so let's take a look at the words now. Okay, it's undefined. Oh, the reason is because I need to say return. So if you just leave it alone, then without a return, it will just be undefined. So now the words are set up. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to write a function that will go through and look for all the letters that matched in the grid. Okay, so we'll call it search, and we need to loop through the words. So we need to make a for I going from the words dot length I less than words dot length, and we need to I guess we could also, let's see if the for each is, I think we might be able to use for each. So if the word is, let's say A and B, and then we say W dot for, okay, it looks like there is a for each, and we put a function here saying that return actually we can do something, say like x is equal to x plus p. Oh, and then we need to close. X is not defined. Oh, that's because okay, so let's define var x is equal to empty string. And now when we do this, let's take a look at x, and x has a and b. So we can use a for each to make a for loop. Since it's a list of words, we can just say words dot for each and define a function here. So it's going to be a word. So this looks like a more convenient way of writing of looping through. Okay, so for each word we're going to do a search. And the way we're going to set this up is the mark is going to be the same as the grid, except that instead of having characters, so if I say mark of 0, 0, that will either be true or false. Okay, so the first thing we need to say is that the mark should be an array. But really, the grid is an array of an array. So we need to make mark also an array of an array. But we have to know how big the initial array is. But we know that because of the grid. So we can say, and we also have to make sure that each of those elements are an array. So we can do that by putting into a for loop. So for I is equal to 0, I less than the grid dot length, we can just say mark of I is equal to an array. So now we set this up so that mark is an array of an array. And initially, if you try to get access to a value, it will. Actually, let's do that. If we take a look at the 0, 0, it should be undefined. And it's undefined. And undefined would be treated as false. And that's what we want. We want to have everything set to false, and as soon as we find letters that match, then we want to make that into true. Okay, so we're going to do a search. And, actually, before we do that, we want to do a search through each of the grid positions. So we have to go into a for loop. So for the row is going to start from 0 and go up into grid.length. And then we need another loop, the column, starting from 0. And that goes from that particular grid's row length. Okay, so we have two loops, and we have the word and the row and column information. So now we can do the search. We can search for, let's see, okay, we can pass in the grid. We can pass in the row and column information. We also need to store the word, pass the word in, and we need to keep track of where we've been. So we can keep track of it by using an array. All right, so okay, so first let's create a dummy version of search. Okay, so grid, row, column, word, and path. And this will always set the mark position. Actually, let's move mark all the way up to the top. As a matter of fact, we can also move grid all the way to the top too. We don't have to pass in grid. We'll make grid a global variable. Actually, we don't even have to set the grid. It'll be set automatically. Okay, so we'll set 0, 0 to be true. Okay, let's take a look at the, let's see, the search. Okay, here, yeah, we don't need the grid anymore. Okay, so let's just see if this compiles. Make sure, okay, good, it compiles, nothing happened. And let's handle the output. So the output should look like, well, we'll be going through the grid positions. So it'll look just like this. And we'll be putting this in a table. So document.write table border is equal to 1. And we close the table. And instead of doing a search now, we'll, for now, let's just put in the tr for the table row, and then we have the close tag for that. And inside, we'll put in the td. That's for the table data. And it'll just be the grid row column information. Okay, and this should print out the grid. Okay, so the grid looks fine. And okay, let's make it a little bit bigger. Up here. Okay, let's make it a little prettier by just centering this. And when we found a match, when it's part of the mark, we'll set the color. So I'll set the BG color equal to okay, and that's a variable. And the variable is going to be determined by the condition mark, row and column. So if it is marked, then we want to say it is yellow. The background color is going to be yellow. And if it's not marked, we'll just keep it white. Okay, so what we should see when we reload this is the U to be highlighted and everything else should be white. Okay, so this is good. So that means that we have the input taken care of, the output taken care of, and all we need to do is write the search function. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, the first condition for the search is if it found, okay, the way the search is going to work is every time it matched a letter of the word, then it'll take the first letter out and look for the rest of it, and just keep looking until the word is finished. And when the word is finished, you'll end up with an empty string. So that's when you know that you're done. So if the word happens to be an empty string, then you know you're done. That means that all the elements in your path, all the row and column information in your path is going to be marked. Okay, so let's put that in a for loop. So so let's get the path. Okay, so path dot for each. Okay, so this will be a row column information, and actually, yeah, it'll be just the see search row and column. Yeah, okay. So we'll just have the row column information. Yeah, RC. Okay, I haven't created the I haven't put anything into the path yet. So I know this is a list of the row and column positions, but I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to use. And I was just thinking about how I was going to use it, whether it's going to be a list of objects or a list of arrays. And well, okay, let's take a look here. So for each one of these, I'll just call it E for now. We can say the mark of E dot row and E dot column is equal to true. Okay, so that should take care of that. And yes, okay. Now the next condition is what happens if it fails. There are a couple of reasons why it should fail. One of them is that, okay, if actually, let's take a look at if it fails, we're not going to do anything. So we might as well think about the other case, which is if it found a match, if it's valid. And so we have a if condition of when it's valid. It's valid if the row position is within bounds. And how do we know if it's in bounds? Well, the row should be greater than or equal to 0, and the row should also be less than the grid length, because the grid length is the keeps track of the rows. Okay, the next condition is that is for the column, the same thing. So actually, this is a column dot length. Okay, so right now, this says that the row and column information is valid. The second condition is that you haven't been in this path before. So basically, it'll be something like not in path. Okay, and then we give it the path and the row and column information. We're going to define this function later. Okay, and the final condition is if the letter matched. Okay, so the letter matched. Okay, so the letter would be an O. I mean the starting with 0. So the word, the 0th of the word is the first letter, and if that happens to equal the grid, row and column, and this represents the character that's in the row and column, and it's actually going to be an OR condition because that could either match the letter or it could match the wildcard character, the question mark. So if any of these three conditions, if all of these three conditions are true, then we know that this is valid. So what we're going to do is okay. So what we're going to do is continue the search, because this is just part of it. So we're going to continue the search by going through all the directions. So we have a for loop in the various directions for the row going from the difference in row going from -1 to 1, and for the difference in column going from -1 to 1. Okay, so this would represent going in all directions. Okay, then we need to run the search, and it's going to be row plus R, column plus C. Okay, so that's the new position. As for the word, we need to, okay, so if we have a letter here, okay, we need to be able to just get the rest of the characters, and I think it's just subster. If I do subster of 1, that means it's a substring starting from position 1 and 0 base, so it'll skip the first character. That's all we need. So we could just say word.subster1. And as for the path, we need to include this new path. So the way we can do this is by saying path plus, let's take a look here. So let's say P is equal to this empty list. And we'll just say P plus, and if we give it like another list, okay, see, that didn't seem to do it. Okay, so I think we need to find, let's see, what could it be? Probably concat. So let's, oh, actually there's, let's try concat. Okay, so concat seems like that would do it. So, and let's see what, and P is unchanged. So this is what we want with concat. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in an object that says row 1 and column 2. So it's in this form. Okay, and we can see that it's going to be an array with a new object in there, and that is going to have the row and column information. So we could just say concat the object. The row is going to be a row, and column is going to be column. Okay, so these are just labels of the object, and we're using it. See, we're using it up here. So for each element of path, we're getting the row and column. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so this looks pretty good. The only thing right now is we need to implement in path. So let's implement that. Okay, so we have the path and the row and column information. Okay, so so we can say that we can start from the beginning all the way to the last element, and if path, if that particular path is equal to dot row is equal to row, and actually I meant I here, and the column is equal to the column, then we know it matched. Then we can just say, just return true because it's in the path. if we're done with this for loop, then we're going to return false because we didn't find it. Okay, so the coding seems like it's done. Let's take a look now. Okay, syntax error on line 22. So let's go to line 22 right here. Syntax error. Okay, that's because I need to close off the if statement there. Semicolon on 25. 25. Let's see here. Concat. Okay, I need to have an extra parentheses here to close that off. Okay, so, and we're done. So everything looks like, you can see rocks over here, Ruby. And remember, Ruby had the wildcard. So let me go to the bottom here and write out the words. So document.write words. And you can see that Ruby has a question mark. So there's R, question mark, B, and Y. And so, and that does the snaking. So this is word search in JavaScript using pure JavaScript.